Hello. I want to speak to you about fundraising. It's a topic that people typically want to ignore. We know it's one of the big issues for boards. And I have a few presentations here. I want to break it down by the role of the role of the board member, building capacity for the board, and then some of the common issues that people face and some of the approaches that you might take to overcome those problems. So it's avoidance. Fundraising is part of our responsibility. As we've said many times at Better Boards, Better Communities, you've got four unique functions. The first is to set strategic direction on behalf of your community. The second is to develop and maintain a constructive partnership with your chief officer. The third is to ensure sustainable resources, of which fundraising may be one. And fourth and lastly is to evaluate and audit finances, programs, and services. Now, the board has a partnership with its staff. So in some cases, the board is going to lead these. In some places, the board is simply going to provide approval. I shouldn't say simply, because providing approval is your stamp on behalf of the community. So your responsibility is the securing of resources in order to achieve your mission, which is pretty important to you. Now, you may have one primary funder. It may be government, local or beyond, but you also have donors, individual perhaps, corporate, grants. And so fundraising continues to top the list of board challenges. Now, board members should have a strong understanding of their fundraising roles and participate in fundraising training during their orientation to provide what? Well, the necessary confidence and competence so you can overcome some of the problems that are endemic to boards generally. So please make sure and review our presentations on influence and relationship building, because they are foundational to fundraising. You're really friend raising or developing relationships with prospective and ongoing donors. So let's look at some of those responsibilities in fund development aside from government, whether local or other, as that is included in those advocacy and influence presentations. Let's take a look then through the lens of each of those four unique functions of the board for fundraising. First, setting strategic direction. Well, fundraising may be part of that, setting directions, plans, expectations, and of course, policies, which I'll talk more about. The second, developing and maintaining that critical and constructive relationship. Well, we need to understand staff roles in fund development as well as our own. Ensuring sustainable resources. Well, you've got to set goals, you've got to understand the board and member roles, and you've got to build capacity. And then evaluating and auditing finances, programs, and services. Well, for fundraising, you have to evaluate the results. So let's start with the beginning, setting direction. You're going to set plans and expectations. You're going to set policies. You need to work with staff to develop and approve fundraising strategies. Now, let's be clear here. You may have no staff. I've worked with organizations like that. You may have one officer and a support person, or you may have a chief executive officer and a whole development team. So I'm going to speak to all of those, and you need to modify it a bit for your own circumstances. So your business savvy as a board and your community insights are going to be invaluable in crafting plans that'll resonate with donors and keep your organization thriving. First things first, you've got to know where you're headed. Sit down with the team and ask yourselves, what do we really want to achieve this year? Maybe it's doubling your annual donations or launching a new community program you've been dreaming about. Whatever it is, make sure it's specific, measurable, and most importantly, inspiring. Once you've got those big picture goals, break them down into bite-sized chunks. Think quarterly targets or even monthly milestones. This way, you always know if you're on track or need to step up your game. Now, about strategy. Here's some ideas to think about alternatives. Hosting an event, of course, perhaps a crowdfunding campaign, partnering with local businesses, getting creative with peer-to-peer fundraising challenges with similar organizations in your community. The key is to find a mix that resonates with your donors and plays to your strengths. You also need policies. Now, my view is that you need policies before there's a problem rather than in the midst of it, because policies enable your staff to be consistent and to reflect your standards. So you need a policy on donor relations. How do we approach it? How do we undertake it? Who does what? You need a policy on naming. Are you going to allow services to be named, rooms to be named, facilities? Is it going to be through donations only? Is it going to be matching grants? What is your policy on this? And of course, sponsorships and partnerships. Do you have issues around fossil fuels? Do you have issues around some corporations in certain sectors? What's your policy on sponsorships and partnerships, and how do they reflect your values? You need a policy on gift acceptance. Is it cash only, in kind, non-cash? What if somebody wants to give you property in another part of the country, or art that they insist be hung in your main offices, or include you in their insurance policy? What is your policy on gift acceptance? Those are really critical to allow staff to know what you're thinking and what's possible for them. Now, you need to also understand staff roles when you look at developing and maintaining that partnership with your chief officer. You want to collaborate and you want to participate. So we've really got 4 players here. You've got your chief officer, perhaps a development officer, the board, and the board member. So let's look at the staff first of all. Typically your chief officer is going to set with the board the strategic direction for board approval. They're going to ensure that the resources are in place for fund development, champion the fundraising program, participate in cultivating and soliciting major donors, but in concert with the board, so you're not stepping over each other, and really often serving as the chief representative of the organization to donors and the community. Now, that's different from representing the community to the organization, which is the board's role. The development officer is going to plan and execute the strategy. They're going to support volunteers in fundraising activities and maintain the infrastructure and systems necessary for fundraising, which I'll talk more about later. Conduct the evaluations and report on the efforts, identifying issues for board discussion, and propose and test fundraising goals and direction. So the development process requires collaboration between and among these roles. And the CEO and board provide high-level leadership and strategy, while that development officer manages day-to-day operations. Now, your CEO may also be the development officer, of course. Now, board members play a crucial role here in opening the doors to donors and demonstrating commitment through their own giving, about which I'll speak when we talk about more board members individually. This team approach creates a philanthropic culture, which is critical to successful fundraising, and it overall assists your development efforts. This team works in partnership with the board. They may be involved in writing grants, but in fact, board members may serve on family foundations, and they may help out there. For individual giving, the staff may write appeal letters and put together donor packets and inform board members who will make the ask about the donor. The staff may attend ask meetings as appropriate. So it's really important that that all be coordinated. Now, in terms of ensuring sustainable resources in fundraising, you've got to have goals and board member roles clearly articulated and help to build capacity. The board as a whole, of course, ensures that the organization is worthy of donor investment, endorses the goals and direction, adopts the fundraising plan as part of the budget process, and participates in strategic discussions. strengths, weaknesses, progress, trends, and so on. Individual board members are going to carry out specific fundraising activities, like identifying potential donors, cultivating relationships, soliciting donations. And they're accountable for filling their personal fundraising commitments and for making personal financial contributions to your organization. Now, this is a contentious issue, but I want to say it's very difficult for a chief officer, a development officer, a board chair to go out and raise funds in the community if they can't say that everyone on my board feels so strongly about our organization, they put up their own money as well as time. I don't care if it's a small amount of money, everyone has to donate who's around that board table. And I mean, you can't make a specific financial amount, but you can say things like, we expect it will be in your top 3 of giving for the year. The board member also serves as a link between the organization and the community and leverages their connections and networks for fundraising. So for the member, this could include soliciting and making individual gifts, introducing their network to the organization, attending events, and bringing guests to events as well. So board members can introduce potential donors to the organization, including those with donor-advised funds, make the ask, and really, even as little, if you will, as write or sign thank you letters once a gift has been received. So it's a collective responsibility. Now, together, board and staff, you may want to articulate your talking points. What's your elevator speech? Why should people give to you? What do you do specifically that's so important? And who benefits? What's the nature of your clients? What are your key selling points? What are your outcomes? How can a donor know that you're effective? Do you have stories or testimonials you can share, or maybe on your website? How do you actually make a difference? And then fourth, of course, is evaluating, auditing results. You set goals, so you've got to keep a close eye on them. Something's not working, don't be afraid to pivot, be flexible, but set up a system to track donations as they come in. I don't care whether it's kind of an old-fashioned spreadsheet or fundraising software. You might want to use a CRM, customer relationship management program, or specific to donations software. This way you'll have a real-time view of how you're doing against your goals. So what should you be looking at? Well, there's some key metrics to keep on your radar. The total funds raised, obviously, the number of donors during a time period, new and returning donors, your average gift size, your donor retention rate, and the cost per dollar raised. And that's really important, that you've got some idea of what you're putting into this in terms of staff time, resources, and how much is being raised in return. Just don't focus on the big number, because each of those metrics tells their own story about your fundraising health. And of course, you'll want a trend analysis over time as well. So keep clear goals, diversify your initiatives and strategies, stay on top of your progress, and you'll be well on your way to fundraising success. It's a collaborative effort of staff and board, but everyone needs to participate. Why? Because your mission is very important. Your values are important. That's why you're sitting around that table. But you've got to have sustainable resources to achieve that mission. So honor your commitment. It's not hard if you're motivated, trained, about which I'll say something in the next presentation on individual member responsibility, supported, and held accountable. Thanks very much.